Alright, welcome back. So, today we're doing quite a bit to our inventory system. So right now I've got my player in my game, and if I hit escape, my pause menu comes up. I'm going to add a little inventory button here that switches us to the inventory. And now, in our actual inventory here, let me actually find this really quickly. I can change the number of items that I have. So let's say that I now have 5 red potions. So there they are. And when you use the potion now, it's going to actually use the item, and when we get down to 0, in this case it'll take it away. I'll also cover it in case you don't want it to be taken away. So, let's jump right in. Okay, welcome back. So, where we left off, we have our inventory system being able to use items, but when we use the item, we're not decreasing the amount that's in our current inventory, and if our inventory number is at 0, the item remains in our inventory. So we're going to make a few changes to fix this. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the inventory item script. So I'm going to open that up here in Visual Studio, and I just happen to have it open already. And I'll get rid of this debug.log because we don't need this anymore. And what I want to do is I want to create another event here, and I'm going to call this decrease amount, because we don't want to decrease the amount on everything. So this is going to be a public void decrease amount, because I mean, like, if something happens and you press use on the sword, or maybe you want an item that's infinite, you don't want every item to decrease. So for our decrease amount here, I'm going to do the number held minus minus, which is just going to decrease it by 1. And then I'm going to check to see if number held is less than 0. So it shouldn't be less than 0 because it doesn't make any sense. We're going to say that number held is equal to 0. Alright, I'm going to save this really quickly. I'm going to go back into Unity here, and I'm going to focus on my health potion item. So as soon as that's done compiling here, I'm going to go to my scriptable objects, my inventory stuff, still compiling. And in the inventory stuff, I'm going to go to the red health potion. And with Unity events, it doesn't have to be just one thing that it does. You can have a Unity event do multiple things. I don't actually know what the limit is. I've never actually tested that, so that might be a fun experiment, but not for now. So I'm going to add a new reaction to this by hitting that plus button. And I'm going to have this come just directly from the item itself. So that's going to be the object we're going to use. And for my function, I'm going to go to inventory item decrease amount. And then this needs to have an amount to decrease as well. So rather than just decreasing by 1, this might be something that you want to decrease by more than 1. I'm going to pass in an integer argument. So integer amount to decrease. And then instead of just minus minus here, I'm going to say minus equals amount to decrease, which is going to take whatever it was and subtract from it the amount to decrease. Now when I go back into Unity here, after this compiles, it's going to ask me, just like with our health reaction here, to put a number here for how much I want it to decrease for each use. That way you could have some items that maybe decrease by 1, maybe they decrease by 3 or something like that. So I need to go inventory item, decrease amount, and it's just going to decrease by 1. I'm also going to change this from having 1 held to having 4 held. So, what's going to happen here, if I just run it right now, hit play, and let that think for a second, and then we want to look at how this affects stuff. So, if I go to my pause canvas and turn on the inventory panel again, I can choose my potion. If I click use, I don't see that that number changed. However, if I go to the red health potion item, it did decrease. It's just not being reflected on screen. So to make that be reflected on screen, we're going to be going into the inventory manager script. So in inventory manager. Now in here, what I want to do is I'm going to make a few changes really quickly. The first one, so like the main logic behind this is when we press the button, we want to use the current item. Then we want to clear all of the inventory slots. The reason that you want to, or that I want to do that is you might have an inventory slot that isn't being used anymore. So you want to clear them all, and then you want to refill all of the slots to reflect the new. So refill all slots with new numbers. Okay. So now, let's go about clearing the inventory slots. So let's make a little method here. I'm going to call this public void. Actually, this doesn't need to be public. Void clear inventory slots. And what this is going to do is it's just going to go through all of the inventory slots and delete them. So since I want to go through multiple items, I'm going to use a for loop. So for integer I starting at 0, I is less than, we want to do however many children the inventory panel has. Because when we create these slots here, we're making them as a child of the inventory panel, and those are the only things that are children of the inventory panel. So I want to go from I equal to 0 to I is less than I can't spell inventory today. Inventory panel dot transform dot child count, which is how many children it currently has. And after each round, I want to increase I. Now, what I'm going to do here is simply destroy that inventory panel. So destroy inventory panel is what I wanted. Dot transform dot, and now we want to get a specific child, and the child that we want to get is whichever I we're on. So the 0th, the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, so on and so forth. And we want to destroy not just the transform of the child, because that's just going to destroy the component. We want to destroy the game object. So dot game object. And all right, I'm going to call that after we use the item. So we're going to do clear inventory slots. And then we're going to refill the slots with their new numbers. Now, for now, we're going to do it just by using that make inventory slots again. But there's going to be a slight issue with that, and I'll show you what it is in just a second. So we're going to call make inventory, yep, there it is, slots. Sometimes you get so used to IntelliSense on Visual Studio when it has a hiccup, you feel lost. All right, so I'm going to save all of my scripts here, pop back into Unity, and I'll let that compile for a second. Okay, and we'll test this out as soon as it's done compiling. Now, for the most part, this is going to be fine, and there are two ways that we can fix the problems that come about here. And I'm going to talk about both solutions, but I'm only going to use one of the two. So in our pause canvas, I'm going to turn on the inventory panel again. We'll fix this jankiness this time. I'm going to choose my potion. I'm going to use it, and see, all of these were destroyed and then rebuilt so that all their numbers would be the same. So if I use it again and again, now see, I'm still using it even though there's 0 of them there. So there's two solutions to this problem. The first solution is you could leave it on the inventory panel but have a count of 0, and then in your inventory item you would only do this event.invoke if number held is greater than 0. So you could say if number held greater than 0, then you could invoke this event. And just to show you this is going to work, I'm going to add a debug here again. So debug.log using, and I'll give the name this dot name. Actually, let's do item name. item name. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to save that. And let's pop back into Unity here. Now we already know that our red health potion is at 0, and scriptable objects persist in the editor between play mode and edit mode. So it's still going to be 0 because I haven't changed it. So what should happen is when I click that use button, I should see no console message pop up saying that it's being used. So let's try that. But if I go back to my scriptable object for my player inventory, and actually I don't need to do it there, red health potion, I'm going to change the number held to like 5, and we're going to use this, and now it's 4, and we used it. So there we go. That's one solution. I'm not a big fan of that solution. Instead, I'd rather, so I'm just going to get rid of this if-then statement. But if you prefer that if-then statement, that's totally fine. Instead, I'd rather get rid of all this. Here, nope, come on. I still want to use the invoke. There we go, and let's get this over. Cool. But instead of doing that, I'm just going to remove the item from the actual inventory manager. I'm not going to remove it from the inventory itself, because I might want to come back later and add more to it. Instead, I'm going to remove it from the inventory manager. So I'm going to go to my inventory manager here, and when we're making inventory slots, we're looking at the player inventory. We're going through all the items in there. I'm going to add another just little check here. So I'm going to say if player inventory dot my inventory, and I want to grab item I from that dot number held is greater than 0. So we're only going to show the item in this case if it's greater than 0. Now if you had some items that you wanted to display even if they had a count of 0, you can still do that by adding an OR statement here. And the OR statement will make it so that this triggers is true if either of the two are true. So this one could be false, but the other one could be true. So like if number held is greater than 0, or this is an OR statement right there, you could say player inventory dot my inventory I dot item name is equal to bottle. Because in A Link to the Past, when you have the empty bottles, they don't disappear from your inventory, they're still there. So you might want some inventory items to persist even if they have a count of 0. So I'm just going to leave that for now. Okay, so back into Unity here. Did I save all my scripts? Let's just make sure. Cool. And let's go right into play mode. And let's turn on that inventory panel as soon as this is all done. Okay, so inventory panel's on. I'm going to use this. Now, problem is we still have this use here. So let's fix that too. Now, we already have a method inside the inventory manager to set text and button. And this takes a description and a button active. So we can just use that here. So after we make our inventory slots, we want to set text and button. And the string I'm going to pass in is an empty string, which is just 2 open close parentheses. And then whether or not the button's active, I'm going to pass in false. So, now if I go back into Unity here, nope, I guess it just needs a second to think. Hit play, and I'll be able to show you what this change has done. So again, turning on the inventory panel. This time let me actually go to my red health potion. I'm going to make this like 5, and then there we go. Alright, so red health potion here. So after I used it, it went away. Now you might not want this to go away. So one thing that you could do here is, again, another check. So you could say if current item dot number held is not equal to 0. So if we have something other than 0 of the current item, then we want to set text and button, it should be is equal to 0. Then we want to set text and button false, but we won't do that unless it's equal to 0. So there's a bit of customization that you can do on exactly how you want your inventory screen to behave. The main thing behind it is you just have to break down the logic of what you want to do into bits and pieces, and then try to implement each of those bits and pieces one at a time as you go. So any big task can always be broken into several smaller tasks, and that's what programming is. You're taking something that's relatively complex, breaking it into its component pieces, and then going from there. So here now, if I press use, it won't go away, but it should go away when we get down to 0. And there we go. That's how we would expect it to work. Now the other issue that we're having right now is I have to manually turn the inventory panel on and off. Now I already have some logic to do this that I'm just going to piggyback on top of. So if you've just been watching this series for the inventory part, I'm going to try to explain exactly what's going on here. So I created a pause canvas, and that pause canvas has a pause panel. And the way that works is in the game itself, I have this pause manager script that is waiting, and if I hit escape, everything in the game freezes, which I don't like doing. And for those of you who want to see what I would do rather than setting the timescale to 0, we're going to talk about that in the abilities section. The ability section, we'll be talking about a slow ability that you can apply to the player or the enemies. And I'm going to end up applying something very similar to that to our scene instead of manually changing the timescale. I don't like changing the timescale because the animations rely on the timescale, and so now no animations are going to work. But anyway, so my options here were resume, quit to, and save. So what I want to do is I want to add another option here to go to the inventory panel, and then an option on the inventory panel to go back to the pause panel. Now, in my pause manager script, let's open this up. All I have is a Boolean value to tell whether it's paused or not. I have the pause panel itself as a game object. I know what the string value for the main menu is so that I can load that scene. When we start, is pause is false. If you press the pause button, and I define that in the input manager as the escape key, then we're going to change pause. Change pause means to take whatever the value of is paused and make it the other one. So if it was true, it's false. If it's false, it's true. And if we are on pause, then pause panel is active and time.timescale is 0. If we're not paused, time.timescale is 1. So what I want to do from here is I want to make a little method here to switch panels. So this is going to be, this should be public void switch panels. And in order to do this, I need to know not just the pause panel, but also the inventory panel. So public game object inventory panel. And this is not just so when I say inventory panel, I mean this object. In this script, I know when I said inventory panel, I meant the content of the scroll view. So I'm meaning this entire panel here. So back to Visual Studio. So what I want to do is paused is false, and I also want to default to say that pause panel dot set active false. So I want the pause panel inactive by default, and the inventory panel as well. Inventory panel dot set active false. Now, pause panel dot set active is true. Now, when we switch panels, let's create a little Boolean here for which one that we're actually. No, yeah, we do. Let's say we've got a public bool, and we'll call this using pause panel. And by default, that's going to become true after we do all of this. So I'm going to say using pause panel is true, and I'm going to default that to false in the start method. using pause panel equals false. Now, when we want to switch our views, or switch panels, I'm going to say the using pause panel is equal to the opposite of what it was, so not using pause panel. So if it's true, it turns false. If it's false, it turns true. Then I'm going to say if using pause panel, so if we should be using the pause panel, then I'm going to say pause panel dot set active true. And if we're not using the pause panel, so else, oh yeah, so I want this to be true and inventory panel dot set active false. And then down here, inventory panel set active true and pause panel set active false. Okay, cool. I also want to do the same thing here, because what might happen is if you switch over to the inventory and then you hit escape to go out of pause mode again, you're going to make, I want all of the panels to be inactive. So I'm going to say, good lord, come on now. Inventory panel dot set active false. And no, that should work just fine. So I'm going to save this, hop back into Unity here, and let's take a look at our pause canvas. So I'm going to turn on the pause panel here. Now, if you just want your pause to go directly to your inventory, totally fine. But I want this to act a little differently. So I'm going to open up my, so I've got resume, quit to menu, which somehow got super big. Quit to main. Let's use best fit for that. There we go. I'm gonna add a, I want it to be like here, so it's like you're changing panels. So using this image, I'm gonna make a new UI button. I'm gonna move this over here. And let's actually make this, as far as size goes, let's go 100 wide by 50 tall. And then instead of saying button, it's going to say inventory. And we'll give this bit script. We'll go best fit, and let's make this fully black. And I'm gonna, oops, don't want to do that. I want the actual button. I want this to be like right there. So for my anchors, I'm gonna put them right at the edge. Oops, come on now. Here, oh, come on. There we go. I'm going to put my anchors right there. Let's do left 0, top 0. And right. And let's do bottom is 0 too. Okay, cool. So now this is going to be the inventory button. And this is going to have a new event, and it's on click. This is going to come from the pause canvas, and it's going to come from pause manager, and it's going to be switch panels. Now I'm going to do the same process for the inventory panel. So let's turn the inventory panel on. Let's grab that inventory button. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste it onto here. And instead of saying inventory, this one's going to go, this isn't great. I'm going to put this up in here maybe, and then I'll call it pause. Oops, come on now. pause button, text, I'm just going to call this pause, and for the anchors, I don't want them over there, I want them up here. And it's so easy to lose these. This is one of the reasons I don't like Unity's built-in UI system. If you're able to, it's not a bad idea to invest in one of the asset store assets that might be better. There it is. Good Lord. Just because Unity's UI system has been around, it's been like this since 4.6. Is it 4.3? I think it's 4.6. And it's in need of an overhaul. And I still want that to switch panels. So if I hit play right now, it should turn both panels off. Let's test this out. Ooh. Oh, because I didn't tell the pause canvas what the inventory panel was. So, and pause button needs to be part of inventory panel. There we go. So pause canvas needs to know what the inventory panel is. Alright, cool. So if I hit play, I should see them both turn off. There we go. Now if I press escape, inventory, pause, inventory, pause, inventory. And inside either one you can press escape to go out. So there we go. We've cleaned up our inventory system quite a bit. The next thing that we need to do is talk about saving our information so that we can access our inventory again when we come back to the game. And then after that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about making the inventory items work correctly in the world. And then we're going to be doing some cleaning up of how the scripts on this game work before we start doing the ability system. I'm really jazzed for the ability system. That's going to be fun. But we have some work we got to do before we get there. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the description or comments down below. You can follow me on Twitter to find out when I post new videos. I also post a lot of just general game dev stuff, art that I think is cool, or GIFs that I think are cool. Yeah, that's right. I said GIF. There's also a YouTuber that's recently come to my attention. His name, I think, is supposed to be Chillehh or Chillehh. I'll put a link to him in the description down below. He doesn't have anywhere near as many followers as he should have. He's currently going through a pretty good Binding of Isaac tutorial for anybody who likes that kind of game. He just did a really good tutorial on random dungeon generation. So I'll put a link to him in the description. And yeah, I hope everybody out there has themselves a wonderful day.